Hey, what's up, everyone? I'm Braun-Duin, and I'm joined once again by
CVM.
and we are going to be battling with some modern cards this time around in preparation.
You got a bunch of standard cards in your deck, though.
There are some standard legal cards in my modern deck. That
Fair.
is true. Sorry to be misleading, but we are battling in preparation for the SCG Open this weekend, which is in
Charlotte, North Carolina.
Yeah, I lost. I knew it started with a C, but it was like Cincinnati, Columbus, Cleveland.
One of those cities.
Yeah, some C city happens to be Charlotte this time around. But I'm going to be battling with a Dredgevine deck, which is a deck that a lot of people wanted to see when we asked last weekend what decks people wanted to see. So I decided I would play it. And this is a version that actually took first in a MOX, so a while back. It was not this month, but definitely an interesting looking deck. So let's go ahead and jump in and see what it looks like. So basically the deck is based around the graveyard and interactions with the graveyard, and the Vengevine is kind of the predominant card in that regard, which is why it's called Dredgevine, because you're going to be dredging Golgari Grave Troll to dump Vengevines in your graveyard, and then you're going to use like all these other creatures to bring them back out. So the way the deck functions basically is exactly that. You're going to use Satyr Wayfinder, Faithless Looting, Golgari Grave Troll, Rotting Rats, Life in the Loam, Dark Blast, Lightning Axe, all these cards that let us dump cards into our graveyard. And then we're going to make use of them when we're in our graveyard. So we can dredge Golgari Grave Troll, we can bring back Gravecrawler, we can delve for Gurmag Angler or delve for Murderous Cut. We can bring Vengevines back. So there's a lot of interaction with the graveyard and a lot of ways to dump cards into our graveyard. I also forgot Lotless Troll, which also dumps these creatures in our graveyard. So there's a lot of ways to fill up our graveyard and then bring them back. It can lead to a lot of really explosive turns and also a lot of resiliency as well, where they kill all your creatures and then 2 turns later they're all back in play again.
Yeah, this deck is just extremely resilient against the mid-range decks in the format. So, your Jund decks, it's going to be very difficult for them to handle Lotless Troll and Vengevine and then all the synergy that you're getting with them. Gurmag Angler and Lotless Troll are both zombies. So is Rotting Rats. Gravecrawler itself is also a zombie, so you're just continually recasting your Gravecrawlers. And then we even have some protection against like the Splinter Twin type decks with Abrupt Decay, and even Lightning Axe can just kill whatever they decide to put Splinter Twin on. So the deck has a lot of angles to attack our opponent and protect itself.
Yeah, and there's also like Murderous Cut and Dark Blast too, for more removal options. So yeah, there's actually a surprising amount of interaction and a surprising amount of resiliency as well. It's a little weak to Graveyard Hate, and it's also a little weak to things like Collected Company, the combo, the Abzan Company version, things like that. But it is good against like a lot of like decks that are trying to grind you out. And then basically the last thing I want to say is that the core of the deck is basically Faithless Looting, and this is, in my opinion, the best card in this deck. And I will keep pretty much every single hand that has a red source and a Faithless Looting, almost regardless of what the other cards are. So that's just how powerful Faithless Looting is and why it's just the best card in the deck, because it enables everything and it also smooths your draws out. It lets you put the cards that you want in your graveyard, and the cards that you want in your hand, and it lets you also, like, you get to dredge twice with the Faithless Looting. Just drawing extra cards does a lot of awesome things. So I think that this is really the centerpiece of the deck and the card that holds it all together.
One last thing is, if it wasn't already apparent, but a really big interaction in the deck is the fact that when you play Gravecrawler from your graveyard, you're actually casting it, which is what allows us to trigger Vengevine coming back, since we are casting creature spells with Gravecrawler coming out of the graveyard. So it's not real apparent, because they're, most of the time when you're putting stuff from your graveyard onto the battlefield through like Unearth or things like that, you're just putting it there. But with Gravecrawler, it actually casts the spell. Yeah,
it's important to note that Rotting Rats does not cast when you Unearth it, but Gravecrawler definitely does. So if you ever mill over 2 Gravecrawlers and some Vengevines and you have a zombie in play, you can go crazy. So.
Jeez.
All right, well, let's go ahead and look at the sideboard and see what options we have there. All right, and here we are with the sideboard, and there's a lot of random one-ofs, but because we see so many cards through our deck, it's fine. Like, Ancient Grudge and Knot of the Bone, and we also have a Knot of the Bone in the main, are cards that we don't care if they get dredged over or whatever because we can just flash them back.
Yep.
And then a Maelstrom Pulse is just kind of a fair answer to a lot of cards. We have one Leyline of the Void and one Leyline of Sanctity, which is interesting.
Why not?
Yeah, just Hope Demise, and worst case you can pitch them or mill over them. They don't really do that much if that's the case. A couple of spell skites are really good against like Splinter Twin and a bunch of other strategies like Bogles and Infect. And then we have Golgari Charm, which just is a very versatile spell, but not super powerful. But when it's good, it's good.
Yeah.
So you'll know generally when to bring that in. Opponent has a bunch of X1s. Opponent has a bunch of enchantments. Opponent's trying to wrath you. Things like that.
It has a very polarizing effect on games, like you said. When it's good, it's insane. When it's bad, it's just atrocious.
Yep. One Damnation, which is good against a lot of creature decks, and then 4 Thoughtseize, good against the combo decks. And one thing I want to point out about the sideboard, especially in regard to Thoughtseize, is don't bring this in very often. Like, I would only bring it in against combo decks because one of the biggest things you can do with a deck like this is over sideboard.
Yeah.
And if you sideboard too much, you actually dilute your deck so much that it doesn't function anymore. You don't want to like dredge a Golgari Grave Troll and hit like 5 of these spells because now your graveyard just doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
So you want to sideboard sparingly in most matchups. And basically, I think a general rule of thumb for Thoughtseize is if you're siding out cards like Abrupt Decay and Murderous Cut or whatever, that's probably when you're bringing in Thoughtseize. There's going to be a few exceptions, like Twin, you probably want Thoughtseize and those cards, but for the most part, like it's going to be things like that where you're going to make swaps like that where you get to keep the core of your creatures the same.
Yeah, that's why I'm actually a little surprised to see a full 4 Thoughtseize in the sideboard.
Yeah.
A lot of times in really heavy engine-centric decks like this, you'll find sideboarding will just have lots of 1s, 2s, and 3-ofs. Because like you said, when you're sideboarding, you really don't want to dilute your deck that much. And, when you want a bunch of one type of effect, you're usually only wanting to bring in about 3. But Thoughtseize is a good card, so who knows, maybe it is right.
Yep. But that is it for the Dredgevine deck. Make sure you stay tuned and watch the battle against CBM, who is playing a Naya Company deck.